Alright guys, so Donald Trump's former Middle East policy guru, Jared Kushner, his son-in-law, the same Jared Kushner, who got $2 billion from the Saudis as he left office, recently came out and gave what is arguably one of the most unhinged interviews that I've seen since October 7th on Israel's offensive into Gaza. So we're going to cover this, and then we're also going to cover arguably an equally insane statement from Donald Trump himself, basically implying that any Jewish Americans who vote for Democrats hate themselves and hate their religion, almost bar for bar. So let's go ahead and start with this Kushner interview. The headline here from The Guardian: Jared Kushner says Gaza's waterfront property could be very valuable. Alright, so they say Jared Kushner has praised the very valuable potential of Gaza's waterfront property and suggested that Israel should remove civilians while it cleans up the strip. I don't know if you could possibly get a clearer way of saying, I think that Israel should go and ethnically cleanse the Gaza Strip and then possibly develop property on the coast. I mean, do you guys think I'm misinterpreting what he's saying here? What else could he possibly be implying by this? They continue, and it gets worse from here. They say, Kushner, obviously, was a senior foreign policy advisor under Trump's presidency and was tasked with preparing a peace plan for the Middle East. Critics of the plan, which involved Israel striking normalization deals with the Gulf states, said it bypassed questions about the future of Palestinians. So it's not just critics of the plan who are saying this. This is just what the Abraham Accords were, okay? It was essentially the United States that was going and buying off in some sort of a way a lot of these Gulf dictatorships and monarchies, and having them formalize and normalize ties with Israel, and explicitly sweeping the Palestinians under the rug, as if they didn't exist, it wasn't an issue that needed to be talked about. And not only was that plan completely ridiculous, but it also likely had a major impact. This is something that Hamas has cited in what led up to October 7th. I mean, the Trump administration, Kushner, this bullshit peace plan for the Middle East, this arguably directly led to the October 7th attack. Because the Palestinians and groups like Hamas are just completely ignored. This ongoing ethnic cleansing and apartheid and illegal occupation, it's just swept under the rug. And so, of course, there is going to be violence that comes from a reaction to those violent institutions that nobody is doing anything about. Especially when surrounding countries are then formalizing ties with the government apparatus that is putting you in that position in the first place. They continue. Again, he said, Gaza's waterfront property could be very valuable if people would focus on building up livelihoods, Kushner told his interviewer, the faculty chair of the Middle East Initiative, Professor Tariq Massoud, I think is how you pronounce his name. Kushner also lamented all the money that had gone into the territory's tunnel network and munitions instead of education and innovation. Oh, it's just the people of Gaza. They're just not innovating enough, right? They're not putting their money into education and innovation. The problems with Gaza, okay, which was already before October 7th, in an absolutely horrible humanitarian situation, with massive chunks of the population being unemployed and impoverished and food insecure and the rest of that, that couldn't have anything to do with the 16, 17-year total blockade of the Gaza Strip, where former Israeli officials openly admitted, yeah, we're limiting the caloric intake of the people of Gaza. We're limiting the amount of aid that can get in, as we're also blockading them on all sides. We have control over the sea, the air. They can't have a port. They can't have a functioning port or an airport. Okay, we're blockading them by the land, the sea. And he thinks that has nothing to do. The fact that Israel has been effectively occupying Gaza for years and years and years and putting a stranglehold on it to the point where it's accurately referred to as the world's largest open-air prison, that couldn't have anything to do with the dire situation or the underdevelopment of Gaza. No, it's just the people of Gaza. Oh, they're too focused on building tunnels instead of building Trump towers on the coast. He continues. He said that if he were in charge of Israel, his number one priority would be getting civilians out of the southern city of Rafah, and that with diplomacy, it could be possible to get them into Egypt. But in addition to that, I would just bulldoze something in the Negev. I would try to move people in there. He said, I think that's a better option so you can go and finish the job. Guys, he's talking about just taking the entirety of the population inside of Rafah right now, which currently is about half the population of Gaza that has been crammed into this massive refugee camp. It's over 1 million people as Israel is preparing for this upcoming invasion, as famine is looming on the horizon, as people are already starving by the dozens inside of Gaza. And he's talking about, not only are we going to, push for Israel to do that invasion, but we're also going to advocate for them to just totally ethnically cleanse Rafah and force these people into the fucking desert. This is his plan, guys. This is what he would do if he was in charge. So you can go in and finish the job. Not to mention that, like, from a military perspective, how the fuck does that make any sense? We're going to evacuate 1 million people, and then all the Hamas militants are just going to stand behind. They're going to stay there and just allow you to come in and eliminate all of them. In what world is this a viable military strategy, number one? But also, think about the humanitarian catastrophe that would be, on top of what we're already seeing as a humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza. I mean, I just talked about earlier today, 100% of the population of Gaza is now at a catastrophic phase, according to the United Nations and their recent report that came out. The catastrophic phase of hunger, okay? And he's talking about, no, we just need to ethnically cleanse them. That's the solution. Shove them all into the desert. That'll help. He continued, another quote here. So the interviewer asks, so this is something you try to work on. And he said, I'm sitting in Miami Beach right now, and I'm looking at the situation, and I'm thinking, what would I do if I was there? So here you have this multi-millionaire asshat who's sitting in Miami Beach, just casually, flippantly, talking about mass ethnic cleansing. I mean, Jesus Christ, man. They continue, asked by this interviewer, Masood, about fears on the part of Arabs in the region that the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu would not allow the Palestinians who flee Gaza, under his proposal, Kushner, or to return. Kushner paused and then said, maybe. So we'll just push them all out, and then maybe not, you get to come back. They're just openly admitting it, guys. And by the way, I'll have another video tomorrow where I'm going to cover a number of different things, including that Netanyahu, behind the scenes, when he was having a secret meeting with some of his cabinet officials and whatever, basically admitted that part of the reason he was pushing to get the Gaza port, which Biden passed off as sort of his plan, it was actually Netanyahu's plan, and he basically came out and admitted that he thinks that the port could be used to expel Palestinians. That could be like a landing place for Palestinians to be removed from Gaza. So he came out and admitted that. We're also going to talk about CNN. Clarissa Ward went and interviewed an Israeli settler group that is actively trying to get the Israeli government to allow them to resettle Gaza, as they call it. To resettle Gaza. In other words, mass ethnic cleansing and illegal occupation and settlements. So, a lot of crazy stuff. Subscribe, do all of that stuff if you want to see that tomorrow. Finishing off here, he went on to say, I'm not sure if there's much left of Gaza at this point. Okay, that's true. Israel has destroyed it. He said, if you think about even the construct, Gaza was not really a historical precedent. What the fuck does that mean? Gaza has been around for centuries. It's not a historical precedent. He said it was the result of a war. You had tribes in different places, and then Gaza became a thing. Egypt used to run it, and then over time, different governments came in. Yeah, the area that makes up what is now called the Gaza Strip, that region, in fact, the entirety of Palestine, has been occupied by different, powers, global powers, regional powers, throughout centuries and centuries. The Ottoman Empire, and then the British Mandate of Palestine, and yeah, sure. But what does that have to do with anything? That means it's just a construct. If that was the case, if being, if wars throughout history leading to some sort of an influence over the formation of a state or a city or a territory, if that makes that territory totally invalid as a concept, then you got to erase basically the entire planet. This is how many cities and states and governments came to be as they are right now. They didn't just poof out of the earth, and France exists with its current borders and what we understand to be France today, and Germany and the UK and the United States. I mean, the United States, you want to claim here that what, the United States doesn't exist as a concept because our country was founded on a war? What the fuck does any of this mean? I mean, Jesus Christ, man. And not to mention, Israel, the state of Israel, was formed in 1948. So, to talk about Gaza as if Gaza doesn't exist as a concept because it was formed in the aftermath of wars. And how the fuck was Israel formed? By his own definition here, Israel doesn't exist as a concept or a historical precedent. There are people alive inside of Gaza right now who are older than the state of Israel. Make that make sense. They say, responding to a question about whether the Palestinians should have their own state, Kushner described the proposal as a super bad idea, shocking, and would essentially be rewarding an act of terror. Shocking that Jared Kushner has an absolutely deranged and delusional policy towards the Palestinian people that involves mass ethnic cleansing, shipping them off into the desert or surrounding countries, and then, I guess, profiting off of the waterfront property that he thinks would be valuable. So, I mean, listen, guys, we're going to talk about this Trump thing, but, like, part of the reason I'm covering this, right, is that I talk about Biden a lot and how horrific his policy in regards to Israel and Gaza and the Palestinians is. It is. It's terrible. He's complicit in genocide right now. But let's not forget Trump. And I'm not doing this to do some bullshit like, well, Trump is worse, and so all of you absolutely have to go and support and cheer for Biden because he's 1% better than Trump on this issue. I'm not doing that at all. I'm just trying to say there are no good options when it comes to this issue, unfortunately. This is American politics here. You got 100% genocide versus 99.9% genocide. That's kind of what we're looking at here. You have Trump, who wants Israel to do whatever the fuck they want, and is willing to openly come out and say that, and couldn't even pretend to give a shit about Palestinians. And then you have Biden, who gives Israel everything that they want, but then rhetorically pretends to care about Palestinians. So, it's mostly a rhetorical difference here. There are some differences on policy, but not much. There's not much daylight there. Maybe Trump would be coming out and saying, you should just nuke Gaza. I don't know. But here was one of the recent things that he said. Actually, I'll just say this before we get to that, because this is basically exactly what I was just saying. Trump says that he would let Netanyahu finish the job in Gaza and says Biden is so bad for Israel. So, in other words, Trump is trying to run to the right of Biden somehow on the issue of Israel. He thinks Biden is weak on Israel, guys. What does that even mean? What does that even mean at this point? So here from the New York Times, Trump says that Jews who support Democrats, quote, hate Israel and their religion. Former President Donald J. Trump accused Jews who vote for Democrats of hating their religion and Israel, reviving and escalating a claim that he made as president that Jewish Democrats were disloyal. A few hours later, facing mounting criticism from Jewish groups, Mr. Trump's campaign repeated his incendiary charge, declaring that Trump is right and that the Democratic Party has turned into a full-blown anti-Israel, anti-Semitic, pro-terrorist cabal. That's the Democratic Party, according to Donald Trump. What do you even say at this point, guys? You had Democrats who were helping to lead the charge on that bullshit bill that was passed last year, where the entire point of the bill was literally to just say Israel is not racist. Israel is not an apartheid. And conflating Zionism and critiques of Zionism with critiques of Judaism and anti-Semitism. So Democrats play this game as well, of saying if you are anti-Zionist or you have critiques of Israel, then those critiques don't just apply to Zionism or to the Israeli government, they actually apply to Judaism. So you must be Hitler 2.0 or something, right? So we've seen this across the political spectrum, from Democrats, Republicans, whatever the case may be. But there's literally no world that you could possibly interpret the Democratic Party as being full-blown anti-Israel and anti-Semitic. The Democratic Party, overwhelmingly, perfectly in lockstep with whatever Israel wants. All the way up from Biden to the Senate leadership to the House leadership, they'll put out some critiques every once in a while. Most of their critiques, as you'll notice, are directed specifically at Netanyahu because he's a very right-wing leader within Israeli politics, right? But there's never any criticism about the foundational aspects of the apartheid and the ethnic cleansing and their genocide in Gaza. Who's shipping them the weapons right now that they're using on the people of Gaza? It's Biden. It's Democrats. And then, again, on the anti-Semitic point, they literally just think, if you're going out there calling for a ceasefire, you're anti-Semitic. If you are somebody who criticizes apartheid or ethnic cleansing, you're anti-Semitic. If you're against them going in and just mass slaughtering civilians in Gaza, you're anti-Semitic. This is their thought process. So they continue. They say, Mr. Trump made his remarks in an interview that was published on Monday with Sebastian Gorka, a former White House aide for Mr. Trump, who now has his own talk show, I guess. Mr. Gorka asked Trump about criticism that prominent Democrats, including Biden and Chuck Schumer, have levied against Netanyahu, the right-wing prime minister of Israel. And he said, I actually think they hate Israel. Any Jewish person that votes for Democrats hates their religion. This is actually anti-Semitic. This is anti-Semitism. You're saying that if a Jewish person, which there are many of, by the way, have a critique of Israel, then they are betraying their religion. That's anti-Semitism. You are tying all Jewish people around the world to the actions of this genocidal apartheid government. That is anti-Semitic. Massively anti-Semitic. It's the same thing as pretending as if, oh, all Muslims around the world, they all support ISIS. That would be Islamophobic. Or even they all support the government of Iran. Or the government of Saudi Arabia. I mean, I've been to many of these protests. I mentioned this so many times before. Some of the people leading these ceasefire protests, okay, here in the United States, American Jews, groups like If Not Now, okay, they're on the front lines of leading some of these protests against Israel. But no, according to Trump, if you're Jewish, and not even if you're Jewish and you critique Israel, then you hate your religion, but if you're Jewish and you even vote for Democrats who are aggressively pro-Israel, you're still anti-Semitic, because a couple of Democrats have criticism of Israel. What are we doing? He said they hate everything about Israel and they should be ashamed of themselves, because Israel will be destroyed. I mean, Jesus, man. He continued, don't forget, when you see those Palestinian marches, even I am amazed at how many people are at those marches. Yeah, it's almost like a wide coalition of people, regardless of whether they're Muslim or Arab or have family in Gaza or not. It's almost like it's a wide, diverse array of the American people who are against genocide, believe it or not. That's why there are massive amounts of people at the protests. You know, and he points out here, you see guys like Schumer, and to him it's just votes. I think it's votes more than anything else, because he was always pro-Israel. He's very anti-Israel now. Chuck Schumer, anti-Israel. The White House responded. They called it vile and unhinged anti-Semitic rhetoric. I mean, that's true. But you guys also conflate Zionism with anti-Semitism, and that is actual anti-Semitism. We had here one of Biden's deputy press secretaries. There is no justification for spreading toxic, false stereotypes that threaten fellow citizens. And they added that the Biden administration will never give hate any safe harbor, including today. I mean, again, nice rhetoric there. But this is the same Joe Biden who has repeatedly since October 7th, for some bizarre reason, come out and reiterated the idea that if it was not for Israel's existence, then no Jews in the world would be safe. The president of the United States of America, where millions of Jewish people live, said if it wasn't for Israel, none of you would be safe. What does that mean? What does that mean? We also had here, hilariously, Jonathan Greenblatt, the chief executive of the Anti-Defamation League, the ADL, a Jewish advocacy group, said that, quote, accusing Jews of hating their religion because they might vote for a particular party is defamatory and patently false. Again, this same guy has been spending the last number of months saying if you go to a pro-Palestine march or an anti-genocide march, or you call for a ceasefire, then you are anti-Semitic. This is the same guy who went on MSNBC and said that some of their hosts were doing propaganda for Hamas because they were critical of Netanyahu and the Israeli military campaign inside of Gaza. So, I mean, I don't know, man. All of this just pisses me off. I mean, I'll finish off with this. Schumer said on social media, I am working in a bipartisan way to ensure the U.S.-Israeli relationship sustains for generations to come, buoyed by peace in the Middle East. So it's like, you can even tell by Democrats' response to Trump's insane remarks here that they have such an affinity for Israel and allowing them to do whatever they want to do and continuing to send them weapons and money and defending them at the United Nations Security Council, all of that. You could tell by their response how not anti-Israel that political party is. But I mean, this is what we get, guys. These are our two options here. You got the Biden administration continuing to send weapons, defend them at the UN, all of that stuff, while giving flowery bullshit virtue signaling rhetoric about how much they care about the innocent civilians that are being killed, while continuing to give them the weapons to kill those civilians, right? So you have that on the one hand, and then on the other hand, you got Donald Trump, who says, finish the job, Bibi, go and destroy Palestine, right? While also having his son-in-law, which is incredible, right? With all of the right-wing attacks against Hunter Biden's corruption and Joe Biden and all of that, Trump put his fucking son-in-law in charge of Middle East peace. And then his son-in-law helped to craft the Abraham Accords that completely removed Palestinians from the equation, okay, which arguably led to the attack on October 7th, and then walked away with $2 billion from the Saudis when he left. We do not have good options when it comes to this issue. It just does not exist. And so I think it's definitely worth talking about, both sides of this equation, just to remind people, what's on the table right now. Like Trump, Kushner, these could be people who are heavily influential. If Trump takes back power. Well, obviously Trump, but same with Jared Kushner, right? I mean, these are the options that we get in this country, guys. Out of 330 some odd million people in this country, this is what we get.